Okay, so get ready to explore some ancient mysteries.
Right.
You guys sent us this article, The Pharaoh's Curse, New Evidence of Unusual Deaths Associated with Ancient Egyptian Tombs.
Ooh, very nice.
Now,
Sounds interesting.
we've all heard the legends, right?
Yeah.
But this isn't about spooky stories. This is about looking at those legends through the lens of science
Okay.
and asking, what if there's more to the story?
I like it.
What if there's something really there?
Yeah, so what's fascinating is that the article, it starts with a medical mystery. It highlights how both ancient and modern Egypt have surprisingly high rates of a specific type of cancer, hematopoietic cancers, which affect the blood and bone marrow.
So, okay, so something's going on in Egypt across time that's leading to this particular health problem.
Right.
What's the connection to the Pharaoh's curse?
Well, that type of cancer is often linked to radiation exposure. And get this, modern studies have found unusually high levels of radiation inside ancient Egyptian tombs. We're not talking normal background radiation here. These levels are way higher than safety standards would allow.
Hold on, are you saying that those tombs are basically like radioactive hot zones?
That's what the research suggests. And here's where it gets even more interesting. They found high levels of radon gas, which is a telltale sign of uranium decay. That points to a long-lasting source of radiation within the tombs themselves, possibly something buried right along with the pharaohs.
Okay, now my ears are perked up. So we've got potentially dangerous radiation levels in these tombs. And you know who else spent a lot of time in those tombs?
Egyptologists.
Exactly. And the article does not shy away from suggesting a connection between the two. It dives into the health records of over 500 Egyptologists who worked in these tombs.
They found a shockingly high rate of cancer and heart problems, like 10 times higher than you'd expect.
10 times higher. That's not just a coincidence. That really makes you wonder if there's something to this whole curse idea after all.
I'm with you. And some of these examples are eerie. You've got Champollion, the guy who deciphered hieroglyphics, dies young after spending months inside pyramids. Then there's Howard Carter, the one who discovered King Tut's tomb, died of lymphoma.
Yeah, it's important to remember, though. Just because there's a link doesn't mean the radiation definitively caused these health problems. It's a complex issue with lots of factors at play. But that's where the article takes a turn for the truly mind-blowing. It starts digging into ancient Egyptian texts. And let me tell you what they found is fascinating.
All right, hold up. So far, we've got weird cancer clusters and tombs that are basically glowing in the dark. Now we're adding ancient texts to the mix. This is where it gets really interesting. Tell us more.
Okay, so these texts are often brushed aside as mystical ramblings. But the article argues that they contain surprisingly detailed descriptions of what sounds a lot like nuclear technology.
Wait, are you serious? Nuclear technology in ancient Egypt? You've got to be kidding me.
I know it sounds crazy, right? But the texts talk about something called saffron cake, described in portions of 235. Now, any nuclear scientist worth their salt is going to hear that and think, wait a minute, that sounds an awful lot like yellow cake.
Which, for those of us who didn't ace chemistry, is basically
Uranium ore, the stuff they use to make nuclear fuel.
You're telling me the ancient Egyptians might have been working with uranium? That's insane. But what were they doing with it?
That's the million-dollar question. The text describes something called an efflux emanating from this saffron cake.
Yeah.
And they talk about it being a source of immense power. But they also warn about the dangerous excrements or waste that came from working with this mysterious substance. They stress the need for secrecy, almost like they knew they were dealing with something incredibly dangerous.
So they had this powerful substance, they knew it was dangerous, and they were super secretive about it? That's reminding me of how we handle nuclear waste today.
It's an intriguing parallel, isn't it? And it gets even weirder. The article goes on to say that the structure of those mastaba tombs, the ones with the underground chambers, they actually share some striking similarities with modern nuclear waste storage facilities.
Okay, now you've officially blown my mind. We're talking deep underground chambers, specially chosen storage containers, maybe even some kind of ancient radiation shielding. It's like they were building these tombs not just as elaborate burial chambers, but as containment facilities.
That's exactly what the article proposes.
Yeah.
It suggests that the Pharaoh's curse might not be some supernatural force, but rather the very real consequences of radiation poisoning from mishandled ancient nuclear technology.
This is huge, GE. Are you saying those ancient texts could be like a warning from the past?
It's a possibility we can't ignore. And that, my friend, is where we'll pick up in part 2 of this incredible deep dive.
So last we left off, we were facing this mind-blowing possibility that Ancient Egyptians might have possessed some form of nuclear technology. I don't know about you, but I'm still trying to wrap my head around that one.
Yeah, it's a lot to process, isn't it? But when you really think about it, the ancient Egyptians achieved incredible things. We marvel at the pyramids, their precision, their sheer scale. It's taken us centuries to even begin to understand the math and astronomy behind them. So in that context, maybe the idea of them having some knowledge of nuclear technology isn't so far-fetched after all.
That's a good point. I mean, we still haven't figured out how they moved those massive stones into place, right?
Exactly. We have theories. But ultimately, the pyramids themselves are a testament to their capabilities. So if we entertain this possibility even for a moment, it really makes you wonder what else we might have missed in our understanding of ancient Egypt.
Yeah, it's like we're seeing history through a whole new lens. Okay, so let's get back to the evidence. We've talked about the radiation readings, the health problems experienced by some Egyptologists. Those intriguing descriptions in the texts. But what about the tombs themselves? The article goes into a lot of detail about the specific features of the mastabas, those early rectangular tombs.
Right. The article suggests that these tombs weren't just elaborate burial chambers. They were meticulously designed with radioactive materials in mind.
Okay, walk me through it. What are some of the design elements that stand out?
We'll take the depth of the burial chambers for starters. They're located deep underground, which is actually a really effective way to shield against gamma radiation.
Because gamma rays are the really dangerous ones, right? The kind that can penetrate through almost anything.
Exactly. And then there's the use of these incredibly dense stone vessels made from things like basalt or diorite to store whatever was considered waste. These materials would have provided even more shielding against potential radiation leaks.
It's like they were creating their own version of those lead-lined containers we use today to transport radioactive materials.
And we can't overlook the design of the shafts leading down to the burial chambers. They were deliberately backfilled with rubble. And the article suggests a couple of reasons for this. One is aeration to prevent overheating from radioactive decay. But here's the really intriguing part. It could have also been a way to manage water levels.
Water? What do you mean?
Think about it. Water is an excellent radiation shield. It's used in modern nuclear reactors for exactly that purpose. So the article proposes that they might have periodically flooded the chambers with water as another layer of protection.
Wait, are you serious? They were that clever? That's incredible.
It is, isn't it? But it doesn't stop there. Remember those chambers above the burial vaults?
Yeah.
The article suggests they might have served a very practical purpose, too.
You mean besides just looking impressive?
Exactly. They might have been used to house living radiation detectors.
Living radiation detectors? What, like some kind of ancient Geiger counter made out of birds?
You got it. The article points out that birds, particularly certain species like the ibis, which was sacred to the Egyptians, are very sensitive to radiation. If there was a leak from the burial chamber below, those birds would be the first to show signs of illness.
So they were basically using these birds like canaries in a coal mine, except in this case, it was a canary in a nuclear waste repository. That's both ingenious and kind of creepy.
It does make you wonder, doesn't it? It speaks to a deep understanding of the natural world and the potential consequences of tampering with forces beyond their control.
And maybe a healthy dose of caution, too. Okay, so I've got these deep underground chambers, specially chosen storage containers, maybe even water shielding and bird-based radiation detectors. It's definitely painting a different picture of these mastaba tombs. But the article doesn't stop there, does it? It goes even deeper, connecting these ideas to those fundamental concepts of ancient Egyptian religion, the Ba and the Ka.
You're right. This is where the article gets really fascinating, suggesting that even these core religious beliefs might be tied to an understanding of radiation and its effects.
All right, I'm all ears. How do the Ba and the Ka fit into all of this?
Well, as we discussed earlier, the Bay was often depicted as a bird, symbolizing the soul's ability to travel between the worlds of the living and the dead. The article suggests that these birds, particularly when shown in different sizes and types, might also symbolize those tiny particles emitted during radioactive decay, what we call alpha and beta particles.
So a goose with its larger size and more lumbering flight might represent an alpha particle, while a smaller, more energetic bird like a sparrow could represent a beta particle. It's like they were incorporating their understanding of these invisible forces into their religious iconography.
Precisely. And then there's the Ka, that vital force or life essence that was believed to survive death. It was often depicted as a snake.
And we all know what snakes are known for, their venomous bite, which can be just as deadly as exposure to high levels of radiation.
Exactly. The article suggests that the ancient Egyptians might have used the snake as a symbol for gamma rays, the most dangerous form of radiation, known for its penetrating power. It's like they were saying, this force, this ka, it's powerful, but it can also be incredibly dangerous if not handled with extreme care.
So we have these powerful religious symbols, the ba and the ka, potentially representing different forms of radiation. It's almost as if their understanding of this technology was so deeply intertwined with their worldview that it became embedded in their most fundamental beliefs.
It's an incredibly compelling idea, isn't it?
It's more than compelling, it's completely mind-blowing. But here's the thing that's been nagging at me. If they were working with this powerful, potentially dangerous technology, why haven't we found more concrete evidence? Where are the reactors, or the tools, the physical proof?
That's the million-dollar question. And unfortunately, this article doesn't have all the answers. But what it does offer is a compelling argument for taking a fresh look at what we think we know about ancient Egypt, for re-examining the evidence through a new lens.
So I guess what you're saying is we haven't exactly found a glowing sarcophagus marked radioactive do not open yet.
Right.
But maybe that's not the kind of evidence we should be looking for.
This isn't Indiana Jones.
Right.
We're talking about a civilization that encoded its knowledge in symbols and in architecture and in carefully preserved texts.
It's like they were playing a giant game of hide and seek with history, and we're only just now starting to figure out the rules.
And maybe, just maybe, the reason we haven't found those more obvious signs of nuclear technology is because we weren't looking for the right things.
We were blinded by our own assumptions about what ancient civilizations were capable of.
Exactly. We assumed they couldn't have known about radiation or nuclear physics, so we never thought to look for evidence of it.
It brings us to the big question, where do we go from here? What kind of research would it take to actually prove or disprove this theory?
Well, first off, we need to take another look at those radiation readings. Are they consistent throughout these ancient structures, or are there specific hotspots that might point to something deliberately placed or contained?
And what about the building materials themselves, the stones used in the tombs? Could there be trace amounts of radioactive isotopes embedded in them, like a fingerprint left behind from whatever they were handling?
Those are excellent questions, and they'll require some serious scientific analysis. We also can't forget about those thousands of stone pots found in the tombs, the ones labeled as offerings.
Right, the article mentioned most of them contain things like mud or plaster or ash, but what if those were just the more mundane contents? What if some of those pots held traces of something more volatile, something that's decayed over time?
It's certainly possible, and it highlights the need for a more thorough inventory and analysis of those artifacts. We also need to bring in experts in ancient Egyptian language and symbolism, people who can take a fresh look at those texts, compare different translations, look for nuances and connections we might have missed before.
It's like we need a team of archaeologists, linguists, and nuclear physicists all working together to crack this case.
Exactly. It's a truly interdisciplinary challenge, and the payoff could be enormous.
Okay, so let's say for argument's sake that this theory pans out that the ancient Egyptians did have some knowledge of nuclear technology. What does that mean for us?
That's the question that keeps me up at night. If they had this knowledge, what happened to it? Was it lost gradually over time, or was there some cataclysmic event?
And if they did manage to lose such advanced knowledge, what does that say about us? Could we be headed down a similar path?
It's a sobering thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
It really makes you appreciate the fragility of civilization and the importance of preserving knowledge.
This deep dive has definitely left me with more questions than answers, but I have a feeling that's exactly what you signed up for, right?
Absolutely. The best mysteries are the ones that keep us guessing, the ones that challenge our assumptions and force us to expand our understanding of what's possible.
Well said. And who knows, maybe someday we'll uncover the truth behind the Pharaoh's curse. But in the meantime, we keep digging, we keep questioning, and we keep our minds open to the endless possibilities of the past.
Because the past, as they say, is a foreign country.
And sometimes it holds secrets that are stranger and more wonderful than we could ever imagine.
Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey.
And remember, the truth is out there, somewhere beneath the sands of time, waiting to be discovered.